I would like to welcome you here today, and I'm going to be talking about a day in the life of co-op, and I thought that to do that, I would talk to you a little bit about what we do in our co-op office and also a day in the life of a co-op student. So first of all, my name is Lynn Stewart, and I manage the Engineering Co-op and Career Services. And I think I have the best job on campus. I have the best job on campus because I get to work with all of the co-op students, and the best part of my job is I get to go out into the workplace and see what co-op students do while they're on their work terms. Some of our co-op students are on work terms of 8, 12, or 16 months. So while they're on the job, they're actually doing really, really genuine engineering work. And they're doing really, really interesting things. So whenever I go out to a workplace, I always take my hard shoes, my safety shoes, and my safety glasses and everything so I can get a tour, so I can actually see what the students are doing. So I get to see some really, really interesting places. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the kinds of places that I get to go and the kinds of things that co-op students do. But first of all, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the day in maybe my life in working in engineering co-op. And like I said, I have the most interesting job on campus. Working with engineering students who are planning their careers is really, really exciting because there are so many different opportunities that you can do when you're out in the workplace. And helping students to sort of get there, helping students to understand what skills they're developing, what the marketplace is like, what engineering is all about, the kind of really interesting technologies that you work with, the interesting people that you get to see, the kinds of really cool equipment you get to operate. Okay, so there are all sorts of interesting things that you can do with an engineering degree, and helping students try to navigate through those different kinds of decisions is really, really great. We work with a lot of employers too. A lot of employers will come on campus because they want to recruit good students. They want to hire good engineering students. So they're very interested in coming onto campus. So we work a lot understanding what employers are expecting of students, understanding the kind of skills that they're hoping that students develop, and helping students to understand how they can make those connections. We're sort of like matchmakers. We want to make sure that students get connected with employers. We want to make sure that employers who are looking for the students, they get those good matches. So a lot of what we do is understand what the employers look for and help the students to get there. We work with students on developing a really good resume, doing interview skills. How many people have had job interviews? How many people have really liked having those job interviews? I don't believe you. Doing interviews is hard. Looking for a position is hard. So in the co-op office, what we do is we try to do everything that we can to make it as sensible as possible, to make sure that you're really prepared, and to make sure that you're really going to be competitive. And so you'll go into that interview, you'll feel good about your skills, you'll feel good about being a good match for that company, so you'll perform well, you'll impress the employer, they'll take you on, and everything will work out really, really well. So we do interview preparation. We host a lot of events on campus as well. We have a lot of employers who will come on campus, talk to you about the different kinds of things that they do at their companies. We have employer panels where they talk about the development of professional skills. We have all sorts of different kinds of workshops on career-related matters, cover letter and resume critiques, interview skills, mock interviews. We talk about the development of professional competencies that all engineers develop, things like good communication skills, developing professional relationships, all of those kinds of things. So anything that you need, that's what we do. And so it's a really interesting and varied job, understanding what the engineering students are looking for, understanding what engineering employers are looking for, and making those matches. So that's what I do during the day. And it's a lot of fun, and like I said, I think I have the best job on campus. The best part is going out into the workplace and seeing what the engineering students are doing. Anybody who's interested in maybe doing something, going into like mechanical engineering? A couple of you, okay. Electrical engineering? Not sure. You know what? I think that's probably really wise to not have that career path defined yet, because engineering is so varied, and the things that people do, even with a mechanical engineering degree, you can find people in those very, very different environments all over the place. So where have I been? Let me see. I've been on a tour, sort of. I've been in the salt mine, actually. That was one of my most interesting jobs, or visits. I was in a salt mine, and this is an electrical engineering student. And what his job was he worked a lot underground in the actual salt mine, which is in Goderich, and it goes way out under Lake Huron. So he's under the water in this mine, and he's an electrical engineer. And what he's doing is he's making sure that all of the electrical systems are working properly. So there are lighting systems, there are alarm systems, there are different kinds of things that are measuring various different levels, all the lighting systems, all of those kinds of things. So that's what his job was. And he took me on a tour of the surface operations, which was really great. And it's huge, and we're up to our knees in rock salt and climbing up all of these iron ladders. And so he's showing me all of these conveyor systems that move the salt from where it comes up out of the mines, from where it actually goes through different kinds of screens and that kind of thing. And then it eventually ends up in one of those big domes. So then it gets transferred into the ships, which are right out there in the port, or into the trucks or into the trains. So his responsibilities were really, really critical in terms of making sure that the mine operations were functioning properly. Certainly the safety was absolutely critical, because a lot of what he was doing was making sure that the emergency lighting systems were maintained properly. So you can imagine in a mine, you're underground, you have to be really good at what you're doing, because people's lives are depending on it. And this is a co-op student who's doing that. Another student, I can't remember his engineering discipline. I think he was actually in mechatronics. He was working on Ontario power generation. Now this is something that's very much in the news with what's going on in Japan. But one of his jobs was that he was the point of contact at the Pickering nuclear station for the UN inspection teams when they came in to inspect the reactor. That's a condition of nuclear safety, is that they have these periodic inspections. And so here we have one of the largest nuclear power generation stations in North America. And who's escorting the officials around? It's Kevin, the co-op student. So you can see that people are doing really, really interesting, like really responsible work. We have students who are working in the automotive industry. Anybody like watching robots? And you see commercials sometimes where they have all these really automated processes and all of these robots. We've got students who are working at places like Honda Assembly, or the CAMI plant, and those are amazing places to go. And you go in there and they have these cells where they have all of these massive robots that are doing all this spot welding, right? And it's like this ballet with these enormous, enormous creatures. And we've got students who are working on fine-tuning and changing some of those motions, adding new robot capacity, adding new movements to these different kinds of cells. So they're involved in actually how a Honda is built and how fast those cars move along the assembly line and how many errors that, how much downtime there is. So their jobs are saving the company, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a year. So they're making very, very significant contributions. We've got students I was at a software and game design company, and we had a student there who was writing code for some of the PS3, the new PS3 programs that were coming out. And mind you, I'm not a gamer myself, and I've never even seen one. But anyway, I'm old, so I'm excused. But one of the things, he was working on some really cutting edge new product development for the PlayStation. So he was really excited about what he was doing, and he had the satisfaction of seeing some of the work that he had done actually go to market. So things that he had worked on, code that he had helped to write, actually ended up, on people's tables, and people were actually playing those kinds of games. We have students who are working at Research in Motion. And everybody knows the Blackberries, right? How many people have Blackberries? Oh, a few of you do, yeah. If you work as a co-op student at Research in Motion, you get a Blackberry. That's just as soon as you walk in the door, you sign up, then you're given a Blackberry. They use co-op students, or the people who work at Research in Motion, you're testers, you're product developers, because you're users, and so your input is really, really important. We've had students who have been working on new device testing. So they have to keep their mouths really zipped, because they're working on devices that haven't yet been released to the public. So they're working on devices that nobody's seen, they haven't been released to market yet, but they're doing a lot of the testing. So we've got co-op students who are working in these highly confidential environments, working on really cutting edge new technology development that it would make this shockwaves through the business pages if anybody knew what was going on. So we have co-op students who are entrusted with that sort of confidentiality and that kind of responsibility in terms of making sure that those products are reliable and they get to market, and that the secrecy that surrounds those kinds of things is maintained as well. So what other kinds of interesting things have students done? We've got students who work in environmental issues. We have there's a student who took me, this is at the CAMI plant in Ingersoll. He's a civil engineering student, and he is working on all of their environmental and regulatory processes. So he took me on a tour of the entire CAMI grounds, and we're in one of the CAMI trucks. And we're driving all over the place, and we've inspected all of the settling ponds where they do all of the wastewater treatment, and where they do the treatment of the water that comes out of the processes used in the plant. So we're standing up on top of one of those enormous tanks, and there's this big impeller in there, and it's swirling all of this stuff, with the zinc that's a byproduct of the manufacturing process is settling. So we've got a co-op student who is responsible for doing all of the documentation and writing up all of the reporting that goes to the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Ministry of Environment for all of the operations at an automotive manufacturing facility. So again, really responsible work, really varied work that students get to do. And co-op is a fascinating way for you to get an introduction to your discipline. An engineering degree is a really, really versatile degree. And if I was better in math and I was about 35 years younger, I would probably want to go back and go into engineering, but that's a little late now. But engineers work in all sorts of different environments. They work in law offices. They work in banks as financial analysts. I see them in just about every environment you can imagine. And again, the one thing that they have in common is that they're getting an engineering degree, which is a really good education in technical analysis and interpretation. So it will take you in all sorts of really, really interesting directions. And again, co-op is a really great opportunity to take some of those different kinds of jobs for a test drive. It's hard to know what you like and what you're good at until you actually do it. So being on a co-op work term gives you the chance to see what it's like to do something day in and day out and see if that's something that you really like. See if it's something that you don't like, and that's just as important. We've had students who said, oh man, I really want to be a designer. I really want to be a designer. And finally they get their dream job for their co-op and they say, man, this sucks. I really don't want to be a designer. So that's very, very good information to know. And again, co-op can help you do that. Does anybody have any questions about co-op or about engineering or the environments where people work? Yes, you came up first.
Do co-op students ever have trouble finding jobs?
You know what? The economy has not been wonderful the last couple of years. I think everybody knows that. But sometimes the technical positions are a little bit more difficult to find. But engineers have to communicate with people. They have to work in teams. There are all sorts of different kinds of skills that are important to an engineer that you can gain in working in a retail environment, for example. So developing really good customer service skills can often be important to an engineer depending on what environment they're in. So we can work on, if you don't get an ideal technical job, then there are ways to turn a non-technical job into a suitable learning environment for a co-op, an engineering co-op student. Does that make sense? Okay, and somebody else who's, yeah.
So how about I understand that Mac doesn't have an official environmental major or anything.
Right.
But do you find that there are environmental jobs?
Yes.
I guess your example was the Camry plant.
That's one of them.
Is there a variety?
Yeah, there's a variety. We have we work with pretty much all of the major engineering employers in all of the engineering disciplines. And in a lot of the environmental ones, that's a growing field. And a lot of companies, even like manufacturing companies, are incorporating environmental positions into their complement. So we've got students who are working in wastewater treatment design. We've got students who are working in the wastewater treatment, some of the chemical engineering students are in that field in terms of doing testing and that kind of thing. We have civil engineering students who are involved in various capacities, whether they're sort of outside doing the kinds of things that this particular student was, or if they're inside doing monitoring. They're developing different kinds of monitoring systems for environmental issues, emissions testing, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's a number of different directions that you can go into the environmental stream. So you can do it from a mechanical engineering point of view, an electrical engineering point of view, sometimes software engineering, depending on what you're doing, or the civil engineering, water and environmental, the more conventional direction.
So you said emissions.
Yes.
So what is that?
We had a student who was a software student who was working in Valley Inco in Sudbury, and what he was doing was working on the development of a lot of their emissions testing systems and writing a lot of the code and programming those, because that's something that they had to test the emissions of whatever, it's a nickel mine. So he had to test all sorts of different kinds of emissions, and they would be reported again to the Ministry of the Environment, Ministry of Natural Resources. So one of his big things was ensuring regulatory compliance. So he was involved in writing the code that would program the systems that they would use to monitor these different required emissions tests that they had to do. Is that good?
Yeah, I'm interested in both the
Yeah.
civil and the chemical side of the environmental.
Yeah, and it's a growing field. And again, a lot of companies that may not have been involved in that are certainly adding that to their list of necessary jobs that they did. I don't know, but I don't believe that CAMI had an environmental person like 10 years ago, something like that. So, yeah.
I understand they're paid, so like how
Yes.
much money would you make doing a co-op?
I'll tell you the record. The average is, I think this year it's about like $18 to $22 an hour. But we have a student this year who's actually going to be making $48 an hour for his co-op. I just
Where?
about passed out when I saw that. No.
Where?
He's going to be working as a securities analyst at a big credit securities investment firm in Toronto.
That's
And he's
awesome.
going, yeah.
That's
That's
big for your
that's an
tuition.
absolute record. I've never seen that before. Yeah.
As you go off to co-op, your colleagues are like the colleagues that don't go off to co-op are continuing their studies and continuing their courses. How do you compensate for what you've missed?
You just come back. You leave school for a year when you go out onto co-op. If you're going out on those long work terms, and then you just pick up where you left off. Your friends will be ahead of you, but you'll be able to pick up where the courses won't have gone. You will just be able to pick up where you go. I'm going to be really quick now because you have to go on to something else. So this is my last question.
Well, could you do co-op like in the summer and do school in the winter and spring?
Yes, because it's an optional program, the work terms have to harmonize with the academic terms. So if you're going to do the 4-month work terms, they always happen in the summer. So there aren't any classes going on then. Just make it fast.
If
Okay.
you do like a year of co-op,
Yep.
and you have to pick up on school when you come back, do you have to pay any extra money for like, because you'll be going to
You don't pay
university
tuition
longer?
while you're gone.
Okay.
So it's like you go away on a work term and then you're just sort of gone from school for that
Okay.
year. And then you return and then you're a student again. So you don't miss any classes or anything like that. You just pick up where you left off. Okay?
Thank you.
And I'm going to have to send you away onto your next event, but thank you very much. It's been a pleasure and I hope you have a great day.